Here's the thing. Okay, I always try to figure out different ways to start this conversation, and I think this might be the easiest. I'm just going to ask you a handful of questions. Do you, okay. So somebody's starving, and they have a gun, and there's a deer in the wild. They can shoot this deer and eat it, right? Like you find that morally acceptable?
Yeah, I would say um, hunting is an essential
Okay.
right for all animals. And I mean, I wouldn't say a human isn't able to do that action because
Hmm?
when it comes to supermarkets, I do have my grievances with those methods of eating and production of meat. But hunting, I think, is a natural human right. Eating is probably eating a hunted animal is probably better than going to the supermarket
Hmm.
in the wider scope of things.
Gotcha. Okay. Now let's imagine two people get stranded on an island, plane crash. They're stuck out on the island. They run out of things to eat. If one of the men kills the other man to eat them,
Mhm.
and then gets found like a month later or whatever, um, would you say that this would be a case, a unique case of you don't charge the person as a murderer?
I I personally would feel that
Oh,
way.
okay.
I would think because the situation necessitates the action of survival.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, none of them would ever know when they may be rescued. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it does give space for those actions. I think if a state or a government of whatever um, that exists today, if it recognizes actions like that, would be interesting because I don't know if they would.
Okay. But
If
like,
it's in
okay.
international waters, I think it is legal. I suppose, like if
Okay.
you, so I that's the only knowledge I know on that sort of.
What if you were deciding if it should be legal though? So like, so you're in the UK,
Yeah.
and let's say you're the ruler, you decide everything, and a couple guys from the UK get on a boat, and then they get stranded on some island. They can't leave the island. They're both starving to death. One kills the other one and eats them. They get saved. They come back. Let's say maybe the family of the dead guy wants to press charges. Or let's say there's no family of the dead guy and you can just recognize these two guys exist. Neither of them have family. One killed the other to survive. Does it become justified or do you view it as morally justified yourself?
I wouldn't say it's morally justified, but because see, this is for me the problem with many things related to human rights and animal rights in the bigger sphere of things, because when things are justified, they don't necessarily have to be moral, in my book, because I think the previous discussion where we brought up things with uh, police shootings and such, a lot of the actions they take for those interactions, I wouldn't call moral, right? In my own personal views, but I would always say they're justified.
Okay.
So, despite what I would feel or think about them, I think it's probably perfectly acceptable to kill and eat a man in a very dire situation because it's happened for
Mm-hmm.
thousands of years and other animals do it, we do it. I mean, that may be a fallacy of some sort to some, but I
Mm-hmm.
think it's valid. Uh, would I say if a person went home, people are allowed to do something about that? I'd say it's perfectly acceptable
Okay.
if a family wanted to press charges or try to press charges and punish the person. That's perfectly fine. But should he be charged as soon as he gets home? I don't think so.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I agree. I got somebody in chat asking a question, and I don't know if I follow this question, but I'm just going to read it anyways. But he says, can you ask him if a mother eats a living baby, what will he do?
Depends on the situation. Just like the island thing. I mean, if a mother ate a baby, on a stranded island, I would think the same about it because no one in that environment has chose to be in that environment. So I believe they don't have um, the moral standard that we have in a society. You know, the rules
Mm.
change. So in there, it's all about survival. Yeah, I don't feel good about it. It's probably the worst thing that I could probably read about if it did happen. So
Hmm.
yeah, I'd say it's the
Yeah,
same situation.
he specified a second later that it's in the same situation on the
Yeah.
island. That's why it threw me off because I'm like, I don't know if I see the connection. If there's a lady neighbor of mine eating her baby, she should probably go to jail. Eating it alive is a whole different story. You should probably kill
Yeah.
it first.
Yeah.
Um,
That's some.
he, he probably meant that it was alive before the decision to
Uh,
kill and eat. Okay, so don't worry, there was no gotcha in there. I completely agree with
yeah.
you. I don't even see much of a problem with the deer situation. And if I was stranded on an island, I would kill a person. Okay, let's go to the opposite end. Kicking a dog in the face is no good, right?
It depends. I mean, if it's
Oh,
attacking
okay.
you, if it's a
In it,
pit
a
bull,
dog that did nothing wrong. A pit bull, yeah, yeah. A dog that did nothing wrong. It's just being a playful, fun
yeah.
dog, and then you just kick
No,
it for
that's.
fun.
I wouldn't say it should be like this is my this is probably your opening for me as a as a discussion because for me I think animals personally cannot have rights, but I think they can have protection if that makes sense. So
Okay.
because
I view rights and protections. I think we might just be using different words, so it's a semantic
yeah,
thing.
well
Um, when
the,
I view rights, I don't believe in natural rights, depending on how it's worded. Rights are just something that if we start a society, then we can have a government that hopefully runs things right and affords us rights. It removes our freedoms from like killing each other. I can't go kill you for fun when you're out in public with your family. And so I that's like a freedom that's lost of mine. If we were out in nature, I could go try to kill you while you're at the park, if there's parks in nature. But I lose that freedom, but I gain protections by knowing that you're not allowed to kill me. And I just I view those as that type of thing as rights given from the government. Do you just prefer to call the protections a government gives animals, just keep that being called protections, but the protections they give humans, they call that government given rights?
I'll clarify it. So
Yeah.
let's put it like this: animals can't vote, and that might sound strange, right? But bear with me because it's the only saving grace of my point here.
Hmm.
So humans can vote; they have responsibilities. Animals have responsibilities as well to a small degree, like farm animals, work animals, but not to the extent that they used to. Horse workers. They used to work alongside their horses a lot, so they had like real working rights. Most horses, I believe, and they even take priority in you know the streets in the UK if you were to ride one. Um, so for most animals, they do not have many responsibilities except to be like, sadly a glorified pet. I have some problems with that, but I think it's not a big problem to, let's say, hurt a dog compared to a human. So for
Hmm.
me, if that dog was hurt, I wouldn't think very well of the person hurting it, but
Hmm.
that doesn't mean I disagree with the ability for them to do it. So yeah, I wouldn't really disagree with hurting any animals at all, but I would say, should it be illegal? Uh, no. Should people feel wrongly um, for their action? Yeah, I think they should
Hmm.
maybe be
Okay.
ostracized to some degree. Social
Let's
rank.
say okay. Let's say that there's cameras out in the forest. So in the borders of a country. So we'll say in the UK, there's forest. There's cameras just catching everything.
Yeah,
I
that's
believe
good.
you guys have cameras everywhere. Anyways, probably not the forest though. Is
Yeah.
it called like CCTV or something like that?
Can I? Someone
Yeah.
just did a really good comment there.
Hmm.
They said that horses cannot consent. Um, Now I don't know if they've said that towards my argument, but it actually supports my argument of animals with rights because they can't consent to work, and they can't consent to certain things. So I would say they fundamentally can't have rights, but I believe we should protect them because I am a, uh, a biologist. I study biology. I primarily do primatology. I study those behaviors, and I believe we should protect animals as much as possible. Um, without
Mhm.
stepping on human rights and such. So for me, that's the
Yeah.
hard part. Making the space between these work without encroaching on the other.
Gotcha, gotcha.
But yeah, go
Yeah,
go ahead. Sorry about that.
it's all right. I'm gonna bring that horse thing. That's Wendy, by the way. She's part of the Society Project.
Okay.
She's called Rats, Pickles, and Music on here. I'm gonna bring that horse thing back up in a sec. And then Skeptic being here, his name's Vabehab. He's also part of the Society Project. Vabehab says he failed to answer the question
Yeah,
about the
yeah.
baby, and I don't think you did fail. You said the same thing. If somebody comes back from an island, they're saved, and they ate their baby to survive. It's
No,
the
I
same
think you
thing
meant.
where it's acceptable.
I think you meant the kicking of the dog thing because
Oh,
initially I
okay.
didn't answer it initially. I had to explain my reasoning before
Oh, I see. I see.
I answered.
Gotcha. Okay, so let me give you a situation. So there's cameras out in the woods, and some guy just goes out and he traps a deer. I don't know if you can trap a deer, but he traps a deer. He doesn't shoot the deer, and then he gets a rope and he hangs it around a tree and he ties it to the deer's leg, pulls the deer up. And this guy is just sadistic. He in everyday life, he goes to work, he has a family, he's a great guy. Everything he does is good. We can see into the future he is never gonna harm a person. And he like him being sadistic when it comes to deer specifically is not going to affect any other actions he does. But he really loves torturing deer, and it gives him the joy that it gives me to watch the show The Bear on Hulu, which if you haven't seen, you should check it out.
Yeah, I do enjoy it.
Oh, nice. Okay, so he just like gets his dopamine hits. He loves it. He's stabbing this deer, but he's keeping it alive. He's a doctor. He's a vet. He knows exactly where the deer arteries are. He's just like keeping it alive but torturing it. He loves the sound. I don't know what sound a deer would make if it was in pain, but it's probably a funny sounding sound.
Not a
But
good one.
no, yeah, this guy loves it though, and it's caught on camera. He's torturing it for hours. Then he, sews it up, keeps it alive, lets it go back into the forest. And he just comes and does this like once a week. But he
Huh.
tortures it. This thing is clearly in pain unless you don't believe a deer can feel pain. Would you say that if this is caught on camera, this guy shouldn't get some kind of a fine or jail time or something like that?
No, I think he should. I think he
Okay.
should, but not for the reasons I think most people would say.
Okay.
See, I believe if you're gonna make rules and if you're gonna be a justicar, for example, like someone who protects things, you have to be impartial. You have to be objective, and personally, what I feel about that doesn't matter, but the impact of it is big. So if I have a guy going out in the woods killing lots of animals for fun and mutilating them, he's fucking the ecosystem up beyond uh, anything any other guy would do just hunting. Because one hunt would probably last you a week,
Mhm.
unless you've been hunting small game, which you can hunt more of without it being ecologically damaging.
Mhm.
But I think that behavior itself is not a good sign of character. It's probably an extreme
Okay,
person
well, I'm gonna
to
pause
think.
you real quick, and I apologize. I'm
No,
gonna
no,
what
no.
I'm gonna
No.
do is I'm gonna try to every time you make a good point, I'm gonna try to remove your point.
Right,
So we're gonna remove the ecosystem part. This
right,
guy breeds two deer, gets a baby that wouldn't have came from it. He has this deer. He takes it to his basement. So there's no ecological anything. There's this deer that he has, however long a deer's lifespan is. He has that long to torture it in his basement.
right. So just a
Yeah,
single entity.
yeah.
I would still say he deserves some level of punishment, but I wouldn't say legal punishment. If it's just one single deer, for example, that you just changed, I think that if we saw it as a community, could probably just ostracize him or make sure to flag the guy. Obviously, he's not the best individual on the face of the earth. So for me, I believe the distinctions should be made. You know, like let's
Mm.
say we bring the ecological thing back in. I think he should be probably prosecuted, put in jail, and fined at
Okay.
the exact same time, and you know also be ostracized too, because of what he's doing is harmful to us in the long run as well as other animals that
Okay.
we need to support and rely on as well.
Okay, let's change it to dogs. Let's say he finds two stray dogs, a male and a female, takes them in his basement, and he breeds these dogs. So he breeds them. He gets their puppies. Let's say he's going to inbreed their puppies, and for the rest of this guy's life, every week he's just going to torture dogs like crazy in his basement. Everything above his basement, when he leaves his basement, he's a great guy. He's not going to turn into a serial killer. He's not going to mess with the ecosystem. And it's not just one dog, it's going to be constant dogs. And then people can be made aware of this. Now, he could be ostracized and therefore go until he finds the right town to live in that doesn't care if he does this. And I don't know if you're in favor of that happening.
Big
But
list,
if
you know?
if he's down there and the dogs are down there and this is known, like somebody snuck in there, put a camera in there and is capturing it. Now, the person that snuck in there and put a camera in there, maybe they should be in trouble too, because you shouldn't be allowed to sneak into people's houses. But nonetheless, the camera's there. The guy doesn't know about it. The cops can see it. Should, at very least, the animals be removed from his home?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good course of action. I mean, I would say that is also in line with what I believe, because I wouldn't say it's a right to protect an animal, but I think it should be a thing we should do. So I think having laws to protect animals from unnecessary violence is a good thing. Um, I wouldn't be against it. But for me, my main concern is I'll give you an example, right? So we have farm animals, right? The same procedure happens with most farm animals, like you describe here with the dog, except we eat those farm animals. We
Mm-hmm.
breed them, you know, yada yada yada. They probably have really bad lives, but it goes on. You know, it's allowed in this day and age, and the reason for that is because it feeds us, right? So there's a twisted view on that. I think for most vegans, they cannot stomach the idea that animals have to live that way. But I will say it can be worse. So imagine I'm an officer and I walk into this man's home and I say, look, you can't keep your animals like this and torture them, right?
Mm-hmm.
That law, wherever it may be in writing, could affect animals that aren't being tortured, for example, but have an environment that, you know, may not be suitable to some people. And they may deem that to be uh, abuse or neglect on the animal. And the only alternative for that is killing the animal anyway, simply because if those environmental laws don't suit it, what else are they going to do? Where are they going to put the animal? Where are they going to store it?
Mm-hmm.
Like things like PETA, for example, when they recruit their dogs into their homes, they eventually end up culling some dogs, which I think goes against their own ethics. Um, so I think that it can push people who are vegans or people who are motivated by animal rights to actually do more harm to animals. So that's why I'm always um, a little bit on the edge and skeptical on where to actually put laws onto animals,
Mm.
because the ramifications could be big. I hope that wasn't
Yeah.
too long-winded.
No, 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 you're fine. And it's complicated. It's hard to know. And that's why I'm kind of breaking this down. So if at one end we have something like should it be fine to kick a dog in the face for no reason? If we say no, then we have at least one thing so far that's not acceptable to do in whatever society we're in. And then if we have that if you're stranded on an island with a fellow human, you can eat them without risking going to jail, then that's on the other end. We have something. And then we also said if you're hungry and there's a deer in the forest and you kill it, that's acceptable. I think it's that one's complicated and I could break it down further. But in a sense, we both agree that those two things are acceptable and the kicking the dog in the face is not acceptable. And then I think we've also figured out that like stabbing a dog and stabbing deer, stabbing animals for fun without killing them and without wanting to eat them maybe is bad. And so we can figure out what's acceptable and not acceptable, and we can figure out in a vacuum, in a perfect world with perfect resources, what would be acceptable, and then also in an opposite situation. So like, I'm not in favor of abortion, but I always explain that if I was on an island and there was 100 babies and I knew I could only keep 15 of them alive and feed 15 of them, and if I tried to keep them all alive, they're just all going to die. I would do the quickest, most humane method of killing 85 of them.
Yeah, that would be the most intelligent thing to
Yeah,
do because they're going to die anyway. You
exactly.
may as well,
But in
just
our society, if I feel that our government is capable of having a foster care system, adoption system, various different things, then I would say, okay, I don't think it should be legal. So right now we're kind of just talking about the current state of the UK and the US, maybe what we would find legal or not legal. So real quick, before we hop too far away from this dog abuser situation, this guy's down there. He has the dogs. He breeds them. He tortures them. Blood's everywhere. They're whining and whatever. And a guy puts a camera there. And so far, you've said that what would be best is to remove these dogs from his care. They are taken out. They are taken away from him. He will never find them again.
yeah.
A week later, he goes out and finds new dogs and does the same thing. His first punishment was just losing them. If he does this again, will he get something else besides losing them again?
I had an interesting thought on this,
Okay.
and I'll play devil's advocate because there is a devil's advocate to be made here, which is astounding that I found it, you know. But so I have a question for you.
Hmm.
Do you know much about human emotions and these types of responses that we evolved with over generations?
I'd say a little
Like,
bit, but it's not
yeah.
much at all. Yeah.
So a lot of people that I have spoken to about this topic, I believe, have an unaware bias. So I'll explain what I mean by that. So,
Mhm.
is the crime hurting the animal, or is the crime actually doing the action itself, whether it be an animal or not? I believe humans are evolved to see extreme behavior and see it's not necessary and not good to have in our society. So
Mm.
I don't necessarily agree that just hitting the dog makes a person bad. I think it's the action itself. So we're not actually putting a law against hitting the animal, but making excessive violence. Um, and I think that could save a lot of time with these types of discussions because, instead of saying this specific animal, this dog needs different rights to this animal, you could put an umbrella term that humans and animals who are extremely hurt or have extreme violence placed upon them without survival situations or need of food should be punished
Mhm.
for that. Because I wouldn't want a man in my home who treats animals that way
Mhm.
because they probably will do the same to me. We are evolved to bond with animals, and
Well, and I like what you're saying, which is why I like to break things down and figure out, like, in vacuums how we would view this. And so that's why I want to specify that we can. I don't know if you like hypotheticals, but that we
yeah,
can magically know this guy will never be harmful to a human. He's
hmm
going to love his family. He's going to raise his kids the best way he can. He's just like the greatest guy in the world. Even vegans would call him the greatest guy in the world, aside from if they could separate that one little knowledge of what happens in his basement. Outside of his basement, he treats dogs so well. He gets all the dopamine hits from petting them and playing with them. But when he goes in that basement, there's a switch. And so I just want to, I like the idea of just narrowing it down and trying to figure out if there is torture happening to an animal that can suffer. Now, I've heard some people think that animals can't suffer and that we suffer, but what we view as suffer is just them reacting to stimuli. If that's a stance you have, then that's fine. But what I want to figure out is, at very least, if hypothetically you accept that dogs can suffer, would there
Oh, I
be
agree.
punishment even if we knew you don't have to worry about this person in your society? We just have to decide, as humans that have a society and have a prison and have the invention of a thing called a fine or the invention of something called community service, aside from removing the dogs, if this guy did the same thing again and again and he would just get new dogs to do it with, does he deserve some kind of something we might call a punishment, but maybe it's not to punish, it's to be a deterrence for other people or something like that.
Yeah, I think maybe laws should probably cover harsh uh, behavior, psychological help, maybe clinical setting would probably fix this guy if he has like a strange Jekyll and Hyde, um, you know, basement scenario. I think a straitjacket may help the man, um, but I would like to say I definitely do think animals have uh, the ability to feel pain. You know,
Yeah.
I I think it's a ridiculous argument to make if people say they don't, but it's another argument to say should we value that over our own well-being as well? Because that's
Mm-hmm.
the island survival thing again.
Mm-hmm.
Like same with the deer. If I'm
Well,
hungry,
yeah. Just have
it,
a
it, it
quick,
comes down.
just a quick thing so you can know how much I agree with what you're saying. I get a lot of shit for it, but I always talk about how I would probably kill thousands of people just to like save a member of my own family or something.
Yeah, I would too.
Like
Yeah,
there there we definitely have
like
something within us to take care of our own. We
yeah,
have our closest family, and then we have our next family and our friends, and all these things. Like I've mentioned how my top focus is myself and then my loved ones. So if a billion people were going to die and I could just press the button to sacrifice myself to save them, I wouldn't do it. I just
yeah.
don't think I
Me neither.
could. Okay,
Me
cool.
neither.
We're alone. We're the
Yeah,
only
yeah.
two. But I would sacrifice myself to save one of my children,
Yeah,
and so we just have that within us, and I think so. Anyways, I just want you to know that you don't even have to convince me of that. we
yeah.
we,
That
uh, we agree on that.
that takes a lot of balls to say on the internet because I think people are morally programmed these days to not put themselves first. I think it's the most moral imperative to put yourself first because you
Hmm.
can't act as a moral agent or be ethical or moral in any sense if you're dead. So it's sort of it sort of circuits the game, short circuits the game to put yourself over someone that isn't in your control. Let's say like my son, uh, he's my responsibility. If harm was to come to him, I would put myself in front of it. But if it was just a stranger who I had no connection with, you know, what incentive is there for me to do that when I could be harmed unnecessarily? Um,
Hmm.
I would say I am a bold person, so there has been instances in life where I will step in front of um, danger for people, but they've mostly been people I've cared about, like friends and such. So
Hmm.
I would say I'm definitely unapologetically the same in that respect.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, this is interesting. I'm trying to think of where exactly to go next. Well, I'll just kind of lay out how I usually talk to people about veganism because I care about myself and so I care about health. If so I what I usually say is like if I was convinced that I needed meat to be healthy, I would eat meat. I just would. So I personally have been convinced that I do not need meat. I haven't had meat in over 8 years. And so if somebody else thinks they need meat to survive or not to survive, but to be healthy, then I get that. That's totally fine. But what I don't find morally acceptable is if somebody knows something is unhealthy and causes harm to animals, and
Mhm.
they will do it just for pleasure, for taste pleasure. So, like, take something like a cake or a cookie. We just we have this processed sugar, this processed flour. We're putting these things together, and we know, according to every study that's ever existed,
It's bad
putting
for
that
you.
in your body is like poison. And if a cow has to have its calf removed from it while it's whining and crying for its calf, and then have machines hooked up to its udder pumping this milk out, if there can be studies to show milk is healthy for you,
Mhm.
then maybe we can justify the actions I'm talking about. But if somebody's going to eat a piece of cake and part of each bite of that cake is pulling on that cow's udder to not bring you health, I can't think of that as morally justified. Now, I've done immoral actions that I'll call immoral and I wish I haven't done, but I guess I just want people to accept they're doing an immoral action if they're eating cake. Is this an immoral action to eat cake?
I would say I partly agree with what you're saying. I mean, I think it's more to do with disgust, human disgust, because disgust is deeply connected psychologically with morals and ethics. We don't like to think it is, but it is. It's
Mm-hmm.
a major social aspect. If you look at people's faces, the one thing humans can detect is the face of disgust. So if someone is eating cake in front of me just to eat cake and just to be a slob, it incites a huge amount of disgust for me. They know it's bad for them. I don't think it's a good thing to do. But to play devil's advocate again, do they have the right to do it? It's one of those like yes, but should we agree with it? No. I think it comes to what we can do to tackle bad behaviors if we have a perfect society, let's say a utopia. It takes a lot of work to get towards.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so Lewis says, would you kill thousands of sentient fetuses who hypothetically would become future perfectly ethical humans, who would hypothetically
So
experience
most fetuses.
maximum happiness for one family member? So he's getting
Yes,
at a couple things here, which is
yes,
my
yes.
my pro life stances, and
Absolutely, I would.
but
I
yeah,
would
no,
eat
not,
them. I would eat
not
them too.
I
I'll
need
double
them too.
down.
So yeah, none of that was matter. Now I don't know exactly how many people innocent people I could kill to protect, not to protect, but to save. Like
Yeah.
obviously, I'd kill all of them to protect, but
It's just how
to
many could you do? Yeah.
yeah, like there's a difference between would I sacrifice like if something's already in motion. So this got brought up because had a debate with Vegan Gains, and he was saying, if this was during the Jewish Holocaust, would I sacrifice myself for the 6 million? And yeah, and so the
No.
idea that something's already in motion and would I sacrifice myself to save them is a different story than if I was going to die, but the only thing that would save me is if I kill 6 million. I don't know if I would kill, and so if 1,000 people were coming after one of my children, I'd kill that 1,000. But if I was told this, my child's going to die unless I go find 1,000 and kill them,
Yeah.
that's a
Then it's
different
indifferent.
story.
Yeah.
And I probably still would have to do it. I wouldn't be able to live with myself. I would have the worst PTSD and all this stuff, but something within me, I'm pretty sure, wouldn't let me not do what I felt like I needed to for that situation. But mostly, I think Lewis was just jabbing at. He doesn't care about fetuses. So
Yeah, that's instinct. It's pure instinct, I believe, on our part to go about those actions. Yeah, I don't know what it is
mhm.
with discussions and fetuses and abortion. I think it's like sort of a what would you say, Achilles heel for most people. It's quite sensitive subject for most people,
Mm.
so it's probably used as a good effect for dialogue. So I don't hold it against them.
Yeah.
It's something that works.
Now that being said, if I had to kill people to save family members of mine, I think I would rather kill fetuses and babies that haven't reached a level of having a desire to
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
continue and
because
that kind of thing.
yeah, I believe you know I'm not a Christian, so a lot of people tell me, I'm a Christian in comments, things and such, because I hold the view that, we should protect human life, um, when it's within the in the womb. Um, but is it to the same value as a fully grown human? I wouldn't say so because it can't do the things that a fully grown human does. It doesn't have the rights a fully grown human does. It can't go and buy property, for example. So
Hmm.
it doesn't have all these memories and experiences. And I feel if you take them away from a human, you're taking more, objectively more things away from a person, killing them
Hmm.
than a fetus. So yeah, I would agree with that, but that doesn't mean I agree with killing them. Just like you,
Yeah.
I'm very against abortion. Um, so yeah, that's what
Gotcha.
I'd say.
Yeah. I got to hop off here in a sec, but I wanted to
Yeah,
bring up one more point of this. I mean, we could probably go on, and we probably will. We'll have longer conversations on the topic. But let's say, okay, so people mostly eat cows, pigs, chickens.
yeah,
Let's say that all the studies come in 100 years from now, and we now know that, let's say it's healthy to eat cows and healthy to eat chickens, but pigs are it's unhealthy. Every element of pig, we now know, no matter how you prepare it, it's unhealthy. Would you, at that point, even if you wouldn't make it illegal, would you find it immoral for people um, to support eating pigs, to pay for pigs to be killed for their own taste pleasure, if it can be known that even to their satisfied minds, they are aware that the pigs are being killed, just for their pleasure and not for their health?
um, it's a tricky one because I do believe humans have the preference of choosing which meats they want, despite them being bad. So it's like the cake situation. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I believe they should have the right to pursue what food they want to eat, and that we should try and inform people as much as possible. But I would say it's definitely a dick move if if you went about it that way for sure. So in that
Gotcha.
hypothetical, I would agree that
Now, do you
it
use
is not
dick move
necessarily.
because you don't think something can be immoral to an animal? So the guy in his basement with the dog,
Mhm.
it's a dick move. He's not doing something good. They should be removed from him. But
Mhm.
you just don't use the word moral or
Exactly.
rights when
Yes.
referring to
Yes.
animals.
Yes,
Okay.
because I think that, you know, for us as a because I know people use the word speciesism and all of these other things. I think us as a separate species or our own species make our own rules. So these
Hmm.
animals clearly can't consent to our rules or be subject to them. So they can't play moral games and they can't be involved in moral dilemmas. But there is a work around this, like I proposed that,
Hmm.
those behaviors that we act towards animals aren't good for us either. So we should work towards mitigating those actions
Hmm.
towards animals, not because they have rights or intrinsic value, because I don't think most humans believe they have intrinsic value at some point either. In the majority of the world, people I've come across, it's very atheistic, and people tend to not hold uh, most human life in value as they would animals these days, like their dog and such. So I think the action matters more, and I think that preventing harmful behaviors towards anything is good as a principle. So we know which humans are of high value.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't usually use the word. Well, I don't know if I use the word value much at all. Regarded as something held, deserved, important, useful, or something. When I think of morals, I usually just think of suffering.
Yep.
I guess you can think of pleasure as well, but I think of suffering and pain. And so if if a moral agent can cause suffering and pain to something that can feel suffering and pain, I use the word moral. So I don't think a dog could do something immoral to a pig or a person, because I don't think the dog is capable of being a moral agent.
Mhm.
Where even though they're not a moral agent, I could do something immoral to them if I
Yep.
make them suffer. But I also accept that we all use words differently.
Yep.
In fact,
Oops.
me and you, me and you, I think, view things, when it comes to morals, on a similar way that others don't. So when I what was it? I was asking you something about, oh, does it become morally acceptable to kill a human to eat it on an island? You said it's not moral because it was you needed to, but it's
Yeah.
acceptable, and that's kind of how I use the word moral as well.
Right.
If the action's happening, it'll stay immoral or immoral. It'll just you can say it's a justified immoral act or something like that.
I would agree
So.
partly with that because I
Mhm.
think we are moral agents, I suppose, in society, but I don't believe we can extend those moral agencies to animals. I don't believe like how I behave
Mm.
towards an animal has any moral implication, but I believe it does have implications of the individual. So um, I think if you do go out and actively harm an animal, you are not a good person. But it's not
Mhm.
because you're hitting the animal, it's the action itself. It's because
Mm.
you're in this contained society. If we were not in this contained society, that action probably wouldn't be seen by anyone, heard by anyone, and therefore there's no real moral agency unless you're involved within a society. That's only my opinion, I
Yeah,
suppose.
well, and I get it. If you don't want to use the word moral there, that's fine. But I don't think you're right about that. It's because of the action and not that you're hurting it. Because what if it couldn't be hurt? What if there was a breed of dogs that could not feel any suffering or pain, and we knew they had no desire for the future or anything, but they were running around. They seemed like dogs, but they couldn't suffer. They couldn't. There was no pleasure, no suffering. They're essentially like AI dogs. But let's
Mhm.
say that they weren't AI. They weren't robots. They had the natural instinct to breed and exist. But we could magically know there's no suffering, no pleasure, no pain, no will for the future, no nothing. I
Mhm.
would kick the shit out of those dogs if they gave me
Well,
pleasure.
well,
I,
well that's sort of my point with animals because
Mhm.
despite them having pain and pleasure and such, I think the argument that the hypothetical that you've brought up here with the AI dogs is a good one because it can work in both our favors, I believe, where we can sort of agree to disagree in some aspects. Because for me,
Mhm.
the moral implication of hitting an AI dog should technically be the same within a vegan framework or animal rights framework as a regular dog, even if it doesn't feel, because what the humans doing is bad. Like the action itself is bad.
Why,
Um,
why is it bad? Is kicking a flower bad? If there's
yeah,
no
yeah, I would
suffering.
I would say it's not truly just about the suffering because for me it isn't about the morality of the action. It's the action itself is not good for humans. So if you have a man going around beating the crap out of vending machines, I
Hmm.
don't think we want a guy like that in a room alone. He's
What about a
probably not
punching
going to be.
bag?
Yeah, I think it's the same. If people are just randomly hitting a punching bag without any reason for it, no training, you know,
Hmm.
I've been in gyms in the past where it's pure psychos in a gym. They're not there to train or to protect themselves. They're just there to hurt and get pleasure. I think if we allow people, because it's sort of a different argument that I'm trying to make
Hmm.
outside of the animal rights thing, and it's
Yeah.
more about human behavior. I think human behavior is the root of those things that we call um,
Mm.
bad to animals or moral. We allow these behaviors to go on to
Hmm.
exceed, and then I think then they extend to animals. Because in the past, when we started to create agriculture and put animals in little fences, picket fences, and milk them and eat them, I think that's where the problem started. And I don't think we could go back, right? We could
Hmm.
stop this big industrial chain, but I think many animals would have to be killed to stop them. I don't think there's anywhere these animals could go feasibly in law that would not cause big ecological damage. So I think
Hmm.
we've sort of trapped ourselves as well in this cycle, and I don't think it's a good thing for us.
Hmm.
But I don't necessarily dislike it since I benefit from it. I eat meat. Um, I wish I didn't eat meat from the store, but unfortunately, I live in a city now. I wish I could have my own
Yeah.
woodlands and live more akin to
Well,
nature.
I don't want to judge you for your meat eating. I do want to judge you for your dog thoughts, though.
Yeah,
Let me.
no problem. I mean, I would never do such a thing.
Yeah, no, I
Obviously,
believe you. I just wonder if it's Okay, I gotta let me do one more thing. Okay, so we're talking about the actions. The actions of being violent and doing these things is the bad thing, and not the suffering it causes. So let's say this doctor of sorts loves dogs. He loves how they make him feel, but he doesn't care about their feelings.
Right.
So he buys a bunch of dogs, or he gets them from wherever he can. They can be strays, whatever. It doesn't matter what happens. But he doesn't want to deal with them like running around and stuff. So he cuts all their legs off, sews them up, and he just has them on a shelf. And these dogs, and I don't know, this might really be how the dogs would act. When he comes up to them and like plays with their face and he scratches their ears, they seem so happy, and they give him the joy that anybody would get from playing with the dog. But he just needs that like once a day. And so it's like less than a minute, and the other rest of the whole day, these dogs are just tormented by sitting on this shelf, not being able to move at all, being forced to stay alive. Maybe they have food pumped into them. The shelf has a built-in bathroom, so the dogs just lay there, and their only purpose for him is him seeing that joy he gets when he scratches their faces. Now, this guy isn't going around being violent to a punching bag or to a dog or whatever. He did this thing once that we can call violence, but it's him just making a choice that isn't. Anyways, I think it's different, so that's why I'm using this example. Would the torture that's happening to these dogs, when his only intention is just to get some joy and then not even think about the rest, and he's not committing any actions, would this not be something that we would want to have protections for the dog that will be ongoing with life of torture?
It, I suppose, but I wouldn't necessarily agree that we should protect the dog. I would say that if you really want to protect the dog, just make a sanction against the action itself. So, you know, mental
The
health.
leg removal action?
Yeah, that's clearly mentally ill,
Okay,
psychologically
so
speaking.
let's say that there was
So,
a punishment. He got punished for the leg removal,
mhm,
and let's say we both agreed. Even if we don't, let's say we both agreed that it was a week of community service and $1,000. So he did this. Okay, now the
can't-
dog's taken care of. The dog, the action to the dog's legs is taken care of now, and the dog's still on this guy's shelf. So
right.
you're saying that the suffering that's going to happen, the guy gets his 1 minute of joy every day. The dogs have minus however long they're sleeping in that 1 minute, because the dogs get joy in that 1 minute actually, because they probably would. But the rest of the time they get suffering. Now that the guy's taken care of for his action he did,
Mhm.
can the guy keep making those dogs suffer by keeping them there?
I mean, I would retort to you here about this because what is the alternative if we take the dogs away from this man? They would probably have to be put down,
Hmm.
because they would need to be fed through tubes and things and such like this.
Hmm.
Um, so it can't surely be a moral thing to kill the animal, because just like me and you, I don't think I could press a button to kill
Whoa,
myself.
whoa, whoa! It wouldn't be a moral thing. It would be an anti-dick move
Yeah,
thing. Okay, go on.
yeah. Because no, I mean for me, like if I were to have no arms or legs,
Uh,
and someone put me out of my misery, like let's say my family chop my arms or legs off, just
yeah,
like the
yeah, yeah.
dog. If I had the choice of pressing the button, I don't think I could, and I don't think the animal could. So for me,
It would be a
um,
moral action for somebody else to take you out of your misery.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah,
gotcha.
no,
Okay.
yes, I suppose. But for the animal, I believe that because it can't play that moral game, and because it probably would want to stay alive because it's an instinctual based creature. I think killing it is just as equally bad as putting it on the wall as a prop. But I know we don't feel that way as people because we are designed against disgust, and we don't like those sort of actions taken against creatures because they may be taken against us. So that's where I sort of uh, uh, draw
Hmm.
the line there.
Yeah, well,
So
I feel like the important thing would be putting it out of its misery. Like, so, so it wouldn't just be that they're even somewhat close to the same. It would be allowing this ongoing torture versus stopping this torture. And it's not stopping the torture because this person in our society is doing any actions. It's just that some action he initially did that he was punished for led to an outcome of, if you don't interfere, there will be ongoing suffering. And I think it's important for us humans, when we spot suffering, we do, if we can, we intervene. So in some cases, we intervene by going to war to stop a guy with a Charlie Chaplin mustache from killing a bunch of Jewish people. But in other cases, we go, maybe we shouldn't. We should focus on our own country or focus on our
Yeah.
own families, and we have all these different things. But we can look at each individual case, and a case where a government is capable of removing dogs that are suffering and putting them out of their misery, I think this should be done, and I think that should be done for the dogs, because we recognize these things can suffer and are suffering. But more important than that, I think the guy, there should be a punishment for the fact that he ever did it that is a deterrence to make people not do it. But not because we're worried about that guy being bad for our society, but because we want a deterrence, because we want to prevent the most extreme of unnecessary torture to things that can be tortured. So,
Yeah, I agree partly with that. I mean, where I draw the distinction is that because we, well, for me anyway, but we have two uh, different values, I suppose, because I am not against, eating meat, for example.
mhm.
For me, suffering is a part of life, so I'm not necessarily against uh, many forms of suffering. Like, if I got my
Mhm.
arm blew off, I wouldn't want someone to put me down. But when it happens to an animal, the animal is put down. So
Mhm.
for me, I don't think we, as humans, on your side of the fence, I mean, have the right to extend that to the animal because of the nature of wanting to protect the animal and giving it moral rights.
Mhm.
But for me, I have no, like, I could go out and do it for you, I have no moral implications for me to go and put an animal down. I don't agree with putting animals down personally,
Mhm.
unless it's really, you know, really, really bad and they can't function. But I suppose, with people who do have hard animal rights stances, there could be a lot of contradictions within that framework that I identify to some degree. Because I don't think as humans we can intervene with animals as much as we think we should. I think we
Mhm.
should just be uh, custodians to some degree, keep their habitats well, and things such as this. That's why keeping pets sometimes is a bit of a nuisance. I agree with keeping them, but are they good for us in the long run? Probably not. I agree
Mhm.
when I'm selfish. I can
Yeah.
identify that. And I think the main problem with humans is we are selfish as a species. Um, y- we have many problems in society that has went unchecked for hundreds of years, and that's why we're sadly in the situation we are now with animal industries.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. Cool, man. Well, I think that was a really good talk, and I do got to hop off
Me
here,
too.
but let's set up another one soon, and
Oh yeah,
let's set up more talks. Maybe we'll set up a panel where we have like six of us from the group. Um, all right. Anybody watching? In about an hour, I'm going to be talking to Jeremy on here about police stuff for the Society Project. But yeah. All right. Take care.
oh, that was great. Take care.
Yep. We'll see you.
Goodbye.